The soaring cost of electricity and rising tariffs year on year has led to thousands of South Africans being unable to keep the lights on each month. Eskom has now put forward a new proposal to the National Energy Regulator that it says will address the old, outdated tariff structure, unbundle energy charges and simplify pricing. Now, can it work? To discuss this, I'm joined by Ntombi Mapapu, the Senior Energy and Climate Justice Co-ordinator at the South African Faith Communities Environment Institute. Ntombi, a very good evening to you and thank you so much for your time. Now, SAFC has welcomed this revised tariff structure. What specific aspects of the proposal do you find most beneficial and why?
Thank you very much for having the South African Faith Communities Environmental Institute. Just to quickly say that we are an eco-justice organization that works with faith leaders and their communities around creating an environment that is sustainable and that is livable. One of the key features of this revised tariff plan that we are supporting is the fact that it's now taking into consideration that there is a need to review the way that tariffs are structured, but we are saying as SAFC that what is important in reviewing tariffs and the way that tariffs are structured is the fact that it needs to be people-centered, it needs to be people-driven. And as we're saying that it needs to involve the people. The way that tariffs are calculated and the way that they're presented to the public is not in a manner that's adequate, in the sense that it needs to be filtered down to the people. People need to be educated to understand how electricity is provided, what goes into providing electricity, and it will then lead to a situation where people are able to use it efficiently and are able to take care of it and are part of the cycle. So we as SAFC are saying that it needs to be a people-driven initiative. It can't be a technical process where there are short timelines to submit written responses and have oral submissions. As you noted, that there was an extension of the written responses from December to January because we as organizations said we can't. We wrote to them, we said we can't have an open dialogue on something as important as electricity in a country that is having major issues with electricity provision, particularly when it comes to providing electricity for the poor. So we are calling for Eskom and Nersa and government for a people-centered approach in providing electricity provision, particularly when it comes to energy poor policies around electricity provision. Thank you.
And I mean, you touch on a very important aspect, and that being of education and the awareness that people who are going to be paying these tariffs, in terms of them understanding how these structures are put together, and ultimately would this then be a fair cost distribution for those different consumer groups? What else do you think needs to be done in order to really educate the people who are going to be paying for this electricity?
We as SAFC are saying that we need to have a national education campaign to be conducted, not only by government, but by different parties within the country. We need to involve civil society, we need to involve NGOs, we need to involve experts, energy experts in this process. So in order for that to happen, government needs to have a clear, effective implementation action program that calls on everyone in South Africa to have an input in how electricity is provided, so that we're all understanding of, you're saying you want to revise the retail tariff plan. What does that actually mean? Do you have community programs where maybe through councillors working with other societal parties that know more about electricity? What is this electricity tariff? What does it mean, particularly for those that are poor, who, for instance, rely on the incline block tariff, where Eskom is saying that they now want to remove it. But we're saying that you can't remove a policy or a measure that is ineffectively supporting low-income households, because an incline block tariff means lower. If you use a few units of electricity, you pay less. And then it gives that cushion for those that can't afford electricity to live until the end of the month. So it gives them that cushion to to be energy sufficient throughout the month. So if you want to remove a key policy or a key measure that supports energy per households, what does that mean for electricity provision and the inclusion of those who need it the most? The Constitution is clear about providing reliable, affordable and accessible electricity. And our main concern is that if you remove aspects such as the incline block tariff, it will affect those that are poor, especially those that cannot afford electricity. Thank you.
I mean, the entity has proposed just separating the charges for energy capacity as well as network services. And many critics have argued that the fixed charges disproportionate affect low-income houses. How else do you think this could have been done in order not to affect these low-income households inversely or adversely?
Thank you. I think firstly, not removing the incline block tariff or proposing to remove the incline block tariff, that shouldn't even been a discussion. I think there should have been more and wider consultation within communities, particularly those that everyone in South Africa will be affected, but more so those that live in energy poor settlements. So as we are calling for this national action or national campaign to educate consumers, we are saying more needs to be done to involve society, especially those that are poor, those that are indigent, those that are living in the outskirts of society and need electricity provision. So we're saying more needs to be done. Government needs to look at ways of petitioning other government agencies when it comes to addressing energy poverty. It needs to have a clear action plan, national action plan, to talk about the national electricity crisis and how Eskom has not been able to provide the necessary electricity during the process of load shedding. And thankfully now things have changed and things are a bit better. But we need to have a more granular approach to providing electricity. And that means having an inclusive discussion with communities about electricity and what it means to have an efficient system and how can all South Africans take care of the electricity provision that we have. So in that regard, we need to have an active citizenry that is able to take care of the electricity, and also an active citizenry that is also informed about the transition to cleaner alternative sources of energy. Thank you.
Speaking of that, of active citizenry, especially with regards to cleaner energy, do you think that this proposed structure would align with the goals of sustainability and environmental justice?
We think that we think in its current form that it has aspects that could align with it, but when it comes to the issue of retaining coal or still using coal as an alternative source of energy, we think that more discussion needs to be held with communities, particularly those that are affected by the energy transition in the form of the coal, moving away from coal. So aspects of it do cover it, but I think more discussion needs to actually be held with communities around moving to a cleaner alternative forms of energy to move to a just energy transition.
And do you think that would be even more affordable to those communities that you make mention of, those that are currently experiencing the energy poverty? I mean, we saw load shedding has come to an end, but load reduction really does affect a lot of those within the poorer communities to this day.
Well, we think as SAFC that solar or alternative forms of energy or renewable forms of energy are an efficient way to provide electricity provision to South Africans, but they have the potential to be slower in terms of, you need sunlight, you need wind to produce electricity. So in actual fact, in as much as they have their positives, we would need to, as society, communities would need to rethink about how alternative forms of energy can be effectively used to provide electricity, and how that would be, how will that be availed to those communities? We know that there's a lot of work that's happening in Mpumalanga around the energy transition, and there have been numerous, I'm sure Newzroom Afrika has done a couple of interviews with communities that are affected by the energy transition, in that area, and there are various stories. Some welcome them, and in majority, most people feel as if the energy transition, the core, has its pros and cons, largely in terms of health, environmental aspects, health aspects, and also aspects that are related to job security. So there are mixed feelings about the energy transition, particularly how it will affect the environment and its sustainability, as well as its impact on livelihoods. So we think that communities need to be actively involved in the energy transition, but more so be equipped to be able to handle the energy transition, so that they are contributors positively, but also beneficiaries of the energy transition.
Well, it's certainly a very long way to go for South Africa with regards to this energy transition. Thank you so much for your time. Ntombi Mapapu, who's the Senior Energy and Climate Justice Coordinator at SAFC.